What Senator Sessions is doing is focusing on a very important issue, but I think he's approaching it in the wrong way. As I understand it, what he has done is lumped in as quote-unquote welfare programs, many programs that are essential for the middle class and working families of this country. Within the umbrella term quote-unquote welfare, he includes the Earned Income Tax Credit, Supplemental Security Income SSI, funding for breast and cervical cancer, early detection, Meals on Wheels for seniors, the CHIP program, and many other programs. Now, Senator Sessions is right to point out, as I often do, that we have more people living in poverty today than almost any time in the modern history of America. And the very next amendment that's going to be offered, I will offer, will create millions of jobs to start putting people back to work when they need those jobs. We're going to be talking today about raising the minimum wage to a living wage so people don't need governmental programs. We're going to be talking about pay equity so that women workers can get the same wages as men, and in doing that, significantly cutting poverty. But right now, we have a whole lot of people who are hurting, who are vulnerable, and I think Senator Sessions' amendment moves us in the wrong direction. Senator Stabenow, did you want to add anything?
Yes, if I might. Thank you, sir. I just want to say, certainly on the surface, the title of this is something we would all support in terms of helping struggling Americans on the road to personal and financial independence. But we see very different paths. This budget, in fact, pulls the rug out from under those who are trying to get ahead by keeping things focused on those that are already wealthy or well-connected. And so I would say simply that if we really want to lift people out of poverty, we could lift half the women out of poverty in this country if we just made sure that we really had equal pay for equal work. We literally would lift half the working women out of poverty. So I'd love to join with the senator from Alabama on those things that actually don't punish folks working 2 or 3 jobs trying to make it, but actually create a real path for opportunity. But I think the intent of this, unfortunately, goes in the opposite direction.
Mr. Chairman, do we get a brief response? 1 minute?
You'll get half a minute before we vote.
Okay. These are
no,
programs
half a minute before we vote. We won't vote yet. We'll stack the votes for later.
Okay. So
in order to get as many amendments as we
want.
Right. That's fair.
Is that
well,
No, you get 3 minutes and we get 2 minutes as well.
okay. All right. So you,
Jeff,
okay.
if they'd gone to 3 people, you might have gotten a yes. So.
Yeah. So now we'll go to Senator Sanders.
Thank you very much.
I accept the goal of 2, 3, and 2. That's a fair limit on time, I suppose.
I didn't know that we were limiting people.
Mr. Chairman, the amendment that I'm offering now addresses, I think, some of the significant problems facing our country. I doubt that there's any person around this table, or very few Americans, who do not understand that our infrastructure, our roads, bridges, water systems, wastewater plants, airports, levees, dams in this country are crumbling. We spend half of what Europe does on infrastructure and significantly less than China. Today, the World Economic Forum ranks our overall infrastructure at 12th in the world. We used to lead the world. We're now in 12th place. I hear many of my Republican friends and all of us talking about what kind of debt we leave to our kids. Well, you know what? When your infrastructure is crumbling, and when the American Society for Civil Engineers tells us that we need over $3 trillion in investment, if we don't deal with it now, we're leaving that debt to our kids as well. So I think we can agree that we need infrastructure, significant efforts to rebuild our crumbling infrastructure. But when we do that, we do something also very importantly, getting to Senator Sessions' point. And that is today, real unemployment in this country is not 5.5%. If you count those people who have given up looking for work or working part-time, it is 11%. And it is higher among young people, and it is very, very high in the construction industry. So it seems to me that now is the time to put substantial funding into rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, make our country safer, more efficient, more productive, and at the same time create millions of decent-paying jobs. This is good for the economy, good for the country, good for our future. So I would hope that we could have unanimous support for an effort to put people back to work at good wages while we rebuild our crumbling infrastructure. That's what this amendment is about.
Okay.
I guess we'd have to take just about the same approach that you did on the last one, that the title sounds good, but the details get into some problems. I don't think there are any of us that aren't interested in increasing the infrastructure. We're just interested in increasing the infrastructure in a logical way that's paid for. That's what a budget-neutral deficit does. So, Senator Portman?
Mr. Chairman, it was interesting because Ranking Member Sanders talked about world rankings, saying we were 12th in the world on infrastructure.
I'm sorry.
You said we were 12th in the world now
Yeah.
on our infrastructure. There's another world ranking, and it's put out by the World Bank, and it says that we are 41st now in the country on our ability to get a permit for a construction project. In other words, to be able to green light something. And we have bipartisan legislation to address that, Senator McCaskill, myself, Senator King, and others. But I see you've got some solutions here on tax loopholes and so on, and there may be opportunities, as some have discussed, to have tax reform that includes some funding for infrastructure. But we've also got to look at this issue of, and this is why the AFL-CIO Building Trades Council supports our legislation and others, how do we actually green light something? Whether it's an energy project or whether it's commercial building, whether it's solar, or whether it's oil and gas, it just takes so long, and there's so many liability issues that discourage investment in America versus other places. We've got lots of testimony on that, including a hearing last year. So I hope that the members of the committee concerned about this will look at that legislation as one way to help get our infrastructure back on track.
And using some of our additional time here, I would mention that we already have a deficit-neutral infrastructure transportation built into the resolution, and it doesn't have to be done through tax increases as this one does.
Well, I think I have a little bit of time left on
Yes.
my initial remarks. This is paid for by addressing one of the tax scandals facing this country, and that is we are losing at least $100 billion every single year because large corporations and the wealthiest people in this country are parking their profits in the Cayman Islands and Bermuda and other tax havens and paying zero in federal income tax. So we should eliminate that absurd provision, put that money into rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, and create millions of jobs. And that's what this proposal does.
I hope that the tax reform folks that are working on this for both sides of the aisle can handle that. And I think that they can. That's where the appropriate action would be for that sort of thing.